Welcome back to the deep dive. We've got this, mountain of information here on a monarch whose life was just packed. War, politics, motherhood. She really did reshape a continent.
Absolutely. We're diving into Empress Maria Theresa's 40-year reign today. She inherited this dying empire, really.
And somehow turned it around, forged it into, something modern. Against huge odds.
It's all about the contradictions, isn't it? That's what we need to get into. You got this really devout Catholic woman
who centralizes government power, even over the church sometimes.
Right. And a mother, 16 kids, totally devoted, you'd think. But then uses them like chess pieces for politics.
Mercilessly, yeah. And she wasn't even prepared for the throne back in 1740, was she?
Not at all. Completely reluctant, yet somehow her defiance saved the whole Habsburg enterprise.
So that's our mission today, right? Figure out that defiance. How did she handle the crisis hitting her right away?
What were her reforms really about? And this whole mother of the nation myth? How did that square with the hard-nosed pragmatist she clearly was?
Okay, let's dive in. We have to start in 1740, Vienna. Her father, Emperor Charles VI, is dead, suddenly.
Yeah, there were whispers, maybe mushroom poisoning. But the main thing is, his death nearly took the empire down with him.
Because he'd put all his eggs in one basket.
Pretty much. The pragmatic sanction. That was his obsession, getting everyone to agree, legally, that his daughter Maria Theresa could inherit.
Which was a huge deal, breaking with tradition for male heirs.
Huge deal diplomatically. But practically.
It left everything else vulnerable.
Exactly. He focused so much on the signatures, he neglected the army and the treasury.
How bad was it?
The sources are blunt. An impoverished state, only about 100,000 florins left. The army, weak, scattered, not ready for anything.
Wow, and she knew it, right?
Oh, yeah. She later said she found herself without money, without credit, without army, without experience, just thrown in the deep end.
And Europe smelled blood in the water, I assume.
Instantly.
Oh,
all those powers, Prussia, France, Bavaria, Saxony, who'd signed the pragmatic sanction.
They just ignored it.
Threw it out the window. They saw a young woman, just 23. Remember, her birth itself was apparently a great disappointment to her father, who wanted a son.
So they saw weakness, an opportunity.
Absolutely. And her biggest rival, Frederick II to Prussia, he didn't waste a second. Just boom, invaded Silesia.
Rich province.
War from day one, basically. So what could she even do? A woman barred from being Holy Roman Empress herself. How did she assert any authority?
Well, she moves fast on what she could control. She got her husband, Francis Stephen, elected Holy Roman Emperor.
Okay, so he gets the title.
He gets the title. Makes him co-ruler, technically, in Austria and Bohemia, too. But, and this is classic Maria Theresa, she made it crystal clear who was really in charge.
She kept the power.
Oh, completely. She wasn't handing over the reins to him, despite loving him, or even to her father's old counselors initially, though she later kind of regretted that part about the counselors. But the power, that was hers. She was going to rule.
And that decision, the hold on to Silesia, that jewel, as she called it, that meant war. Straight into the War of Austrian Succession against Frederick, yeah. The man she'd always call that evil man. And it started badly for her, really badly.
The Battle of Mollywitz in 41.
A disaster. Crushing defeat. Her advisors were basically saying, cut your losses, give up Silesia, make peace. The French were even talking about carving up the whole empire.
Panic in Vienna.
Total panic.
Okay.
And this is where her personality, her, sheer force of will comes in. She absolutely needed the Hungarians. Their military support was critical.
But they weren't exactly thrilled about her, were they?
No, very skeptical. A woman on the throne. So she had to win them over. And she did it brilliantly. At her coronation in Pressburg, September 1741.
What happened?
It was pure political theater. She goes before the Hungarian Diet, wearing the crown, lays out the crisis, says, everything's at stake, the kingdom, her children.
And they bought it.
Well, apparently there was some heckling at first. But then she pulls out the masterstroke. She holds up her baby son, Joseph, gets tearful, dedicates him to the brave Hungarians.
Wow, playing the mother card big time.
Totally. Vulnerability as a weapon. And it just worked. They roared back, "We will die for Maria Theresa."
Incredible. That secured the troops she needed.
It did. And it also cemented that lifelong, bitter hatred between her and Frederick. That rivalry shaped everything for decades.
It even flipped alliances upside down, didn't it? The diplomatic revolution.
Oh, absolutely stunning move. Masterminded by her and her advisor Kaunitz. Austria allies with France.
Their arch enemy.
For centuries. Against their old allies, Britain and, of course, Prussia. All driven by one thing, get Silesia back. crush Frederick.
Pure pragmatism. Did it work? Did she get Silesia back in the end?
No. Despite some wins, like the Battle of Kolin, after the Third Silesian War ended in 1763, Silesia was gone for good. And some Italian lands, too.
But she survived. She kept the core territories.
Exactly. Austria, Hungary, Bohemia. She held the monarchy together against pretty much everyone, which is amazing when you think about where she started.
Even Frederick had to acknowledge her, didn't he? Despite hating her.
Yeah, there's that grudging quote from him later on. Something like, she detests him, but respects his ability. And she only shows her passion when it's to her advantage.
So even her enemy saw her control, her calculation.
He did. He recognized she was a serious player.
Okay, so the major wars simmer down. Now she turns inwards, right? This is where the mother of a nation idea starts to take shape.
Exactly. She goes full tilt into domestic reforms. Institutional, financial, educational, really quite revolutionary for the time.
Because the wars showed the old ways weren't working.
Precisely. The old feudal structures couldn't support the kind of state she needed. So first, a big standing army, 108,000 men.
And then centralization.
Radical centralization. She created these district offices that Kreishenkt, pushed Vienna's authority right down to the local level.
What did that actually mean on the ground, bypassing the nobles?
Totally. Before, local lords ran things justice, taxes, mostly for their own benefit. The Kreishenkt put state officials in charge, reporting back to Vienna.
And taxes. Did she manage to tax the nobles?
Yes. A huge change. They'd always been immune. Now, everyone had to contribute to the state coffers.
And did it work financially?
Amazingly well. State revenue doubled, from 20 million to 40 million florins. By 1775, they actually had a balanced budget. First time ever for the Habsburgs.
That's incredible. From broke to balanced, it's a real turnaround.
It shows the reforms weren't just tinkering. They fundamentally changed how the state functioned, made it solvent, modern.
But this modernizing drive, it seems constantly at odds with her personal beliefs, her deep Catholicism.
That's the core tension, isn't it? She's streamlining the state like an Enlightenment ruler, but personally. Deeply conservative, especially on religion.
She wasn't a fan of religious toleration.
Not at all. Explicitly rejected it. Said things like, toleration, indifferentism are exactly the right means to undermine everything.
Which played out in her policies.
Definitely. Her views on Jewish subjects were very harsh. We have that quote where she calls them a plague.
It's jarring given the mother of the nation image.
It is. And it led to things like the 1744 proposal to expel thousands of Jews from Prague.
Which didn't happen.
No, but only because her financial people stepped in and warned it would wreck the economy.
Pragmatism trumping prejudice again, driven by the needs of the state.
Seems to be the pattern. Her enlightenment was about state power and finances, not abstract ideals of tolerance.
You see that conflict in law, too, right? Torture's still okay, but also some progressive public health things.
Yeah, it's a mixed bag. She publishes the Constitutio Criminalis Theresiana, which still allowed torture, still criminalized witchcraft, lagging behind other parts of Europe.
But then
she's banning lead in pewter dishes in 1773 for safety. And eventually she does support abolishing torture in 1776, though her son Joseph was really pushing for that.
Always that push and pull. And personally, amidst all the statecraft, 16 children.
16 kids in 19 years. It's mind-boggling. There's that quote suggesting if she hadn't been almost always pregnant, she would have gone into battle herself.
That image? But that maternal side had real policy impact too, didn't it? With smallpox.
Yes, tragically. Smallpox hit her family hard. 4 children died, 2 daughters-in-law. She even got it herself in 1767.
And survived.
Survived, and became a huge champion for inoculation, which was still quite controversial then.
How did she promote it?
Famously, she hosted a dinner at Schönbrunn Palace for the first 65 children who'd been successfully inoculated in Austria. A very public, very personal endorsement.
Then comes 1765. Just as things seem maybe consolidated, her husband, Francis Stephen, dies. Suddenly.
Yeah, a huge blow. They were celebrating their son Leopold's wedding. His death just devastated her.
And it changed her, visibly.
Completely. She cut her hair short immediately, painted her private rooms black, wore mourning clothes for the rest of her life, 15 years.
Wow. 15 years of mourning.
Deep mourning. She apparently spent the 18th of every month, the anniversary of his death, completely alone. She wrote she felt like an animal with no true life or reasoning powers, just gutted.
But the statecraft didn't stop. Did the grief maybe even sharpen her focus on the dynasty, on legacy?
You could argue that, because her children became even more central to her foreign policy, this relentless dynastic marriage policy.
Marrying them off across Europe, pawns for the state.
Exactly. It sounds harsh, and it often was for the children. Their personal happiness wasn't really the priority.
Yeah.
The state's needs came first.
We see that with Marie Antoinette, right? Her daughter sent to France.
Oh, absolutely. Maria Theresa basically groomed her for that role once the French showed interest, and then kept up this constant fortnightly correspondence.
Criticizing her.
Constantly. For being lazy, frivolous, trying to micromanage her daughter, the Queen of France from Vienna. It's quite something.
That control impulse again. Which must have made things tricky when her own son, Joseph II, became co-ruler after his father's death.
Very tricky. Joseph was brilliant, arguably more intellectual than her, definitely more radical in his reform ideas, but she never gave him the final say.
Leading to clashes?
Constant ideological disagreements, as the sources put it. They clashed over everything, especially reforms Joseph wanted, like more religious tolerance, which she blocked.
And then there was the first partition of Poland in 1772. That caused a major rift.
Huge rift. Joseph and Kaunitz cooked up the deal with Prussia and Russia. Maria Theresa was initially horrified, on moral grounds.
She questioned the right to just carve up another country.
Yeah, she asked, what right have we to rob an innocent nation? She really struggled with it.
But she agreed in the end.
She did. Took Galicia for Austria. Political survival, she argued, which led to Frederick the Great's incredibly cynical line.
The more she cried, the more she took.
Exactly. Captures that blend of genuine anguish and cold pragmatism perfectly.
And that tension with Joseph continued right up to the end, even costing her money she'd worked hard to save.
Yes, the War of the Bavarian Succession in 1778, often called the Potato War.
Why Potato War?
Apparently because the army spent more time foraging for food, like potatoes, than actually fighting major battles. But it was Joseph's aggressive move into Bavaria that started it.
And she disagreed.
Deeply. She saw it as pointless, expensive, driven by Joseph's ambition. It drew them into another conflict with Prussia, setting back all those financial gains she'd made. She consented, but very unwillingly. She knew it was a mistake.
So the last decade or so, she's dealing with declining health.
Yeah, the shortness of breath, fatigue, edema, chronic issues.
But she refused to step down.
Absolutely not. She seemed to believe surviving smallpox was a sign from God that she had to rule until the very end.
And that end came in 1780.
November 29th, 1780. Surrounded by the children who were still with her, she was buried, as she'd planned, next to Francis Stephen in that double tomb she'd commissioned years before as a widow.
And her death immediately unleashed change.
Oh, big time. Joseph II finally had sole power, and he just hit the accelerator hard.
How fast are we talking?
Well, put it this way. She issued maybe 100 or so edicts a year. Joseph, in his first few years, was firing out nearly 700 annually, a whirlwind of reform, much of it quite radical.
So, looking back at her whole reign, what's the final assessment? Even Frederick the Great had a surprisingly respectful take.
He did. He said she'd honored her throne and her sex, which, coming from him, is quite something. Politically, her legacy is huge. She took that fragmented, bankrupt inheritance and turned it into a functioning, modern state.
The start of enlightened absolutism in Austria, even if her version was, well, complicated.
Deeply complicated. Focused on dynasty and state power above all else. But maybe even bigger was the cultural legacy she forged.
The Mater Austria, mother of the nation.
Exactly. That image, that myth became incredibly powerful. It was almost Austria's answer to Prussia's Frederick the Great. Not the cold, male military genius, but the strong, pious, maternal figure. She became the greatest Austrian of all time in national narratives later on.
So you have this enduring paradox. The good, almost naively grand woman on one hand.
And the incredibly tough, pragmatic ruler on the other. Centralizing power, fighting wars, using her kids as political tools.
Her legacy seems less about specific battles won or lost and more about just survival and shaping an identity for Austria.
Absolutely. Survival first, then transformation. And ironically, the very things she personally grappled with, her faith, her role as a mother, her grief, those became the building blocks for Austria's national myth, defining it against its rivals.
Which leaves us with a really interesting question for you, the listener, to think about. If Maria Theresa, the person, often seemed out of step with Enlightenment ideals,
yet her policies laid so much groundwork for modern government in Europe, what does that say about how politics actually works, about the tension between survival and maybe ideological purity?
And that core question, did the mother of the nation ultimately serve her children, or did her children serve the survival and the power of her state?
A complex figure, no doubt about it, a true lioness of her time.
That's all for this deep dive.